The day Frank found out he had a brain tumor, Henry had an accident on set. Jenny rushed to be by Henry's side, not caring about anything else. The entertainment tabloids were buzzing with stories about Jenny and Henry reigniting their old flame, painting Frank as the husband who came in and stole her away. But Frank and Jenny had grown up together and been married for 5 years. Everyone around them said they were a perfect match. Frank always thought so too, until now, realizing that childhood bonds couldn't compete with a sudden love. So he decided to let her go. It's been 24 hours since Henry's accident. They've missed the best time to control the public narrative. The top trending topic still features Jenny and Henry's names, with rumors about their rekindled romance flooding in and almost drowning Frank. After all this time, the trending topic hasn't been taken down, nor have the news stories been suppressed. This was Jenny's statement of where she stood with Henry. Frank sat in an empty living room, gripping the doctor's diagnosis paper tightly. He couldn't shake the doctor's words from his mind. Frank, the tumor is large. Surgery is tricky, but not operating could mean it grows, affecting your memory and motor skills, and there's a risk to your life. You should call your wife and get admitted immediately. Frank called Jenny and didn't get into details, just asked her to come to the hospital. Jenny initially agreed, telling Frank to wait for her. But after over an hour with no sign of her, Frank called again, and her phone was turned off. When he reached out to Jenny's secretary, he learned Jenny was already on a flight to her city. Frank pressed to know why Jenny went to her city, and the secretary said, "Sir, just check the trending topics. It's all over the news." Frank pulled out his phone. Number 1 on the list was the report about the on-set accident, with Henry burned and hospitalized. Seeing the news, Frank pulled his coat tighter, hugging his arms. That was when he noticed how cold the winter in S City felt this year. At the hospital hall, he dialed his sister's number. As it rang, he realized the time difference. It wasn't even dawn there yet. He hung up quickly. Back home, he tried calling Jenny 7 or 8 more times, but she didn't pick up. Frank isn't the type to pester. Usually, if he can't reach someone after a couple of tries, he waits. But now he was anxious. He wished he could call enough times to make Jenny annoyed, forcing her to pick up and argue with him. Unfortunately, Jenny never answered. Frank felt a deep sense of helplessness. The Whites and the Millers were family friends. He and Jenny grew up as childhood sweethearts, so it was no surprise they married. 5 years in, Jenny was always so distant. He thought it was just the familiarity of an old couple phase where things were naturally calm. But today, with Jenny dropping everything to be with Henry, the news spreading, stocks tumbling, and Jenny seemingly not caring, he realized the so-called calm was a lie he told himself. Jenny's parents called. Frank didn't want to pick up, but Susan texted him, saying she wanted to come by. Frank didn't want to see anyone right now. He answered the call instead. Susan gently asked him, "Frank, have you been able to reach Jenny?" He replied, "No, I can't reach her." Susan paused. "Frank, don't overthink things. We only see you as our son-in-law, and we'll have Jenny come and apologize to you." Frank curled his lips into a bitter smile. He wanted to tell them he didn't need that. In the end, it was between him and Jenny, and her parents had always been kind to him. No need to take it out on them. Softly, he assured Mom, "Don't worry. I'm fine, but I might not be able to respond to the reporters right now." Susan said, "You don't have to. We'll handle them. You just rest." Not long after hanging up with Susan, Jenny called. Frank answered and put it on speaker. Jenny's voice came through, cold and detached, as if he was just some irrelevant stranger. "Why so many calls at night? What's up?" He paused. "Nothing much." There was a moment of silence before he heard someone shout, "Jenny, Henry's awake. He's asking for you." "I'm coming," she replied. That was it. All he heard next was the click of the call ending. He let the disconnected tone drone on, not bothering to end it himself. Jenny had been with Henry since college, pulling apart and getting back together over and over. Frank and Jenny weren't in the same city then. He heard bits and pieces. He had liked Jenny since he was a teen. Jenny knew that. So when she was with Henry, he was heartbroken for a long time, watching from a distance as they seemed inseparable. He buried his feelings for Jenny deep down. Later, at a friend's wedding, Jenny caught the bride's bouquet and turned to confess to him. They were all friends. Frank didn't want to embarrass her, so he said yes. He tried explaining later, but from that day Jenny pursued him. As friends and family wished, they got married. Frank eagerly entered the marriage, but found it met with Jenny's coldness. Their days passed quietly like an unremarkable stream. But looking back now, Jenny had never forgotten Henry. So what was he to her? Just a tool to forget Henry? Frank clutched his chest in pain. Everything went dark, and he curled up on the couch, shivering uncontrollably. After some time, he calmed down and reached for his phone to call Melody. "I'm heading back to London in a few days," Frank said. "Is Jenny going with you?" "I'm going alone." The line went silent for a moment. Then Melody asked, sounding worried, "Did you two have a fight?" Standing by the open window, feeling the cold wind sting his eyes, Frank felt his nose tingle at her question. "No, we didn't. I mentioned before about pursuing my graduate studies. Couldn't arrange it earlier, but now I have time. Jenny's super busy with work, maybe she'll come around New Year." Melody was relieved to hear things were fine between him and Jenny. "Okay, let me know when you plan to leave, and I'll have my secretary book a flight for you." "No worries, the visa might take a month. I'll book it myself. Once I have my flight, I'll let you know so you can pick me up." The siblings chatted a bit more before hanging up. Frank folded up the diagnosis paper and hid it away. Jenny came back a week later, but she wasn't alone. She brought Henry back from City R, settling him next door in the villa Melody had bought for Frank. The keys were handed over when he got married, though he rarely stayed there. Occasionally, a housekeeper would come to clean. Now, it turned out Henry had moved in. In his relationship with Jenny, Frank had always been the one to give in. He never voiced his needs or argued. Even when conflicts arose, he would always compromise and let it slide. This time, he really wanted to ask Jenny, "Is this okay?" But the words got stuck in his throat. Since he had already decided to leave, why bother? He watched Jenny for a moment in silence, then turned back to organizing the bookshelf. Jenny, feeling the weight of Frank's indifferent and empty gaze from earlier, tried to explain. "He's just staying for a while, for convenience's sake with the medical team." Frank stayed silent, his back to her, and smirked sarcastically. He didn't argue with Jenny. Sure, but let Henry know that realtors might be bringing people to see the house soon. Could disturb him. Why sell the house? Are you short on money? Frank set the book he was holding into a box and looked up at her. "Not at all. Melody gave me that house, but I never lived there. It's a waste, so I thought I'd sell it." Jenny looked puzzled. With the wealth of both families, there were lots of unused properties. She knew Frank was just making an excuse. She wanted to ask more, but Frank was clearly busy and uninterested in discussing it. Feeling out of place, she turned to leave and noticed the books were packed into boxes, realizing he wasn't just cleaning. "Why are you packing up the books?" "Just tidying up, taking them out for some air." Jenny nodded. As she was leaving, she remembered Frank's medical checkup. "Oh, about the health check, are you okay? I was in a rush that day and didn't get back to you." Frank paused, recalling the tumor in his brain that could burst any time. He shook his head slightly. "No big deal." Jenny acknowledged it with a nod. "Henry's injuries are serious, and his emotions are unstable, so I'll be over there often." Frank answered flatly, "Okay, do what you need to do." His tone was calm and unbothered. Jenny didn't think much of it and left for the next-door villa. Frank stood by the window, watching her leave, and let out a soft laugh. Everything about their home, the couch, the bed, the framed artwork, the curtains, even the slippers for guests, he had thoughtfully chosen. They were all pieces of his hopes for their marriage. A joke now. After packing up the books, Frank was about to call Jack for dinner when Jack preemptively called him. "Frank, check online." Browsing, Frank saw Henry and Jenny trending. Clicking through, Henry had posted something like, "Going full circle back to you, my heart's home." The picture showed a silhouette of Jenny, making soup. In the comments, fans were cheering their reunion, shipping them back together. A few bashed Frank, claiming he forced Henry away to marry Jenny and now deserved to be dumped by her. Revenge for separating their beloved pair. Frank scrolled silently until Jack broke the silence over the phone. "Frank, what's going on? Did you and Jenny split?" His pause was brief. "Not yet." Jack cursed angrily. "Then why's she running around with that jerk?" Frank chuckled lightly. "Calm down. I was just about to invite you to dinner, and then you called. Are you home? I'll come pick you up." Frank smiled. "Sure, I'm too lazy to drive. Come over." Jack arrived quickly. Frank finished showering and changing just in time to meet him, and they headed to their usual spot, a cozy private dining place. After they ordered, Frank told Jack, "Help me find a lawyer. I'm planning to divorce Jenny." Jack looked at him worriedly, and Frank brushed it off with a shrug. "I have a tumor in my brain, need surgery. I've started my visa application, planning to head to London once that's sorted." The news hit Jack hard. His eyes welled up immediately. "When did this happen? What did the doctor say? Have you told your parents?" Rapid-fire questions, all filled with concern. "The day Henry had his accident, the doctor asked me to get Jenny, but she was so focused on finding Henry. This surgery of mine is risky and requires a family member's signature. I need to go back to my parents for it." Jack's tears fell immediately. "Don't be upset. It's not worth it for such a person." "I'll go with you," Frank said, wiping Jack's tears with a smile. "Don't worry, I'm fine now." When they got back after dinner, Jenny was sitting in the living room. "Where'd you go?" "I had dinner with Jack." Frank took off his coat, put down his bag, changed his shoes, and sat opposite Jenny. "We've been talking for years about making that wish trip, but we never went. Can you go this year?" Frank was referring to going to Les. Frank heard somewhere a rumor that their relationship had a hurdle, and it required their sincere prayers to achieve happiness. Jenny found it ridiculous and never paid attention to it. Now, when Frank mentioned it again, Jenny replied, "It's just nonsense, you've remembered it this long. But with Henry's situation now, we just can't go. Maybe after the holidays." Frank expected her rejection, but this time she mentioned going after the holidays. In the past, he would have been thrilled at the thought of booking tickets and planning. But now he felt calm, responding with a simple leaving it at that. Jenny felt that Frank had become strangely quiet recently, making him seem unfamiliar. She looked around the room and felt something was missing. "Did you take down our wedding photo?" "I took it down to clean the frame." With her phone in hand, there was silence between them. Frank got up to wash up. Upstairs, after he finished showering and drying his hair, he saw Jenny sitting at the bedside with his phone. "Jack called earlier, said he's been in touch with the lawyer. He'll send you their contact info." Frank's expression changed slightly, wondering what else Jack might have said. He just gave a faint okay. Jenny looked at him, as if trying to see through him. "Why do you need a lawyer?" Frank relaxed a bit, subconsciously lowering his eyes. "Helping a friend. Just go through Leo, no need to trouble Jack," Jenny said coldly. "Not a close friend. Didn't want to use someone from the company." Frank replied with a seamless excuse, surprising even himself. Jenny had already showered before Frank got home. After he lay down, she did too. But once in bed, Frank didn't touch his phone, just turned away and remained silent. It struck Jenny how mundane they had become. Was it guilt? Since she returned from our city, Frank had changed. There was an awkwardness between them. She turned towards him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "What's wrong?" she asked. Frank stiffened slightly. Jenny noticed. She only then realized how long it had been since they had any intimacy. She moved closer, only for Frank to turn and gently push her away. "I'm tired, let's sleep," he said. Jenny lay down and asked, "Are you mad about Henry?" Frank curled his lips, thinking what right did he have to be mad? Why should a mere partner for convenience be upset? "No," he replied. After a moment, he added, "Why would I be angry?" The words tightened Jenny's heart. Why shouldn't Frank be mad? His wife was spending time with an ex and even arranged for him to live next door. He should be angry, shouldn't he? Yet he was indifferent. Jenny felt confused about Frank, unable to understand him. He's an actor, such an accident is serious. Nothing's going on between us. Don't believe what you read online. Frank thought of Henry's post. If Jenny said that, she must have seen it. By not stopping it, she seemed to accept it. When the media speculated about her stealing Henry away, she didn't speak up. So what now? Did they say something online? I've been too busy to check my phone. Jenny felt relieved. No, nothing, let's sleep. Frank soon fell asleep, but Jenny was restless. She got up, went downstairs, and passing the study, opened the door, finding a packed box in the corner. Contrary to Frank's claim of cleaning and airing out books. Looking around, she noticed the wedding photo frame there, but the picture missing. Standing in the study, she pondered everything that happened recently. Finally, despite the late hour, she contacted her assistant. Do you have my husband's medical report? The assistant, half asleep, responded, Jenny, I have it. Do you want me to send it? Send me a copy. Once she hung up, the information came through. She examined the report carefully. Everything was normal except for some anemia and a vitamin D deficiency. Frank disliked being out in the sun. Relieved by the report, Jenny relaxed. The next morning, to her surprise, Jenny stayed home. Frank was puzzled. Without Henry, Jenny was a workaholic. Even with Henry, it was surprising she was still at home at that hour. Frank came downstairs. Jenny closed her phone and stood up from the couch. I booked afternoon tickets to Les. Pack up, we're heading to the airport soon. Frank was confused by her sudden decision, raising an eyebrow. Seeing his reaction, Jenny explained, I just remembered our anniversary's coming up. Thought we could spend a couple of days there, celebrate, and then come back. Frank didn't ask about leaving Henry behind. For years, no matter if it was a birthday, anniversary, or just a regular date, Frank planned everything. Jenny would show up if she was free, and if not, Frank would go alone. So when she came up with this plan today, it was like a thunderbolt in the dead of winter, leaving him confused. Was it because of last night's little incident? Sudden guilt? Trying to make it up to him? Frank took a deep breath and decided to treat it as a farewell trip. After breakfast, he packed up clothes for the cold and items to deal with high-altitude sickness. Soon, after their things were packed, they headed to the airport, where Frank handled check-in and luggage. They got into the waiting area smoothly. With some time before boarding, Frank decided to grab coffee. But when he returned, Jenny was nowhere to be seen. At first, he thought she had gone to the restroom, but after waiting with no sign of her, he called her. Out of breath, Jenny told him, Frank, I can't make it. You go first, I'll meet you in a couple of days. Standing there, his face turned pale, and his hand with the coffee trembled. Why? Henry committed suicide. Frank opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. He hung up and went alone to Les. He spun prayer wheels and made wishes. But his wish changed from hoping to grow old with Jenny to wishing for his own peace and health. He didn't contact Jenny, and she didn't reach out to him either. Her promise to meet him was never fulfilled. Even after Christmas and their 5th wedding anniversary had passed, there was no call or message from Jenny. The last trip? Gone. The final anniversary? Non-existent. He wasn't surprised, really. He hadn't held much hope anyway. Yet, after so many years together, it still hurt. A deep, sharp pain. Back from Les, Frank went straight to see a lawyer. Given his wish for a quick divorce, the lawyer suggested Frank discuss with Jenny to sign a divorce agreement and then handle the rest, like the division of property, later. Frank hesitated, unsure if initiating a divorce now meant facing the entire Miller family. He felt awkward confronting Jenny's parents if they tried to talk him out of it. He was just too tired to deal with it all. Frank asked, if I leave and authorize you to act on my behalf, can you sign the divorce papers with Jenny and then I can finalize it with her later? The lawyer, Simon, calmly looked at Frank and nodded. Sure, we can do that. Just need you to sign an authorization contract. After signing the contract and authorization, Frank and Simon left the building. But they hadn't gone far when a group ambushed Frank, drenching him in milk tea and coffee, with bottles and cans thrown at him. He was stunned. You shameless homewrecker. Go die. Henry was too kind. That's why you've been bullying him for years. Insults came from all directions, and as someone shoved him, he fell to the ground. Simon, who had already turned back, noticed Frank being attacked and rushed over with security. "Stop! What are you doing?" Simon called out while pulling Frank up and told a security guard, "Call the police." One guard was stunned but complied, while another helped Simon with Frank. Frank was a mess, completely covered in stains and dirt. Addressing the angry young women, Simon sternly asked, "Who sent you? Do you know this is illegal?" The leader, acting like a delinquent, sneered at Simon's words. "Illegal? We're correcting a wrong. This vile guy bullied our Henry for years." Simon, aware of recent news, asked, "This Henry, you mean Henry? Stop playing dumb. So Henry sent you here?" The girl, filled with arrogance, declared, "Henry's too kind-hearted, that's why we can't stand him being bullied." Simon sneered, "Well, let's see if Henry shows up to help you at the station." The cops arrived quickly. Simon took Frank back to the office to wash up and change before heading to the police station for a statement. On the way, Simon checked his phone and saw videos of Frank being attacked had gone viral, with countless comments insulting Frank. Seeing this, Frank's eyes were cold. "Simon, besides the divorce, I want you to handle this too. Sue everyone who's cursed me, like the posters with over 500 likes. And those who hit me today, I'm not letting them get away." Simon nodded. "Don't worry, Frank. I'll handle all of it." After finishing at the police station, Frank felt exhausted. "Frank, let me take you home." Frank shook his head, saying, "No need, Simon. You go ahead. I want to take a walk." With much left to handle, Simon didn't argue and sent a message to Jack. "Jack, Frank's not doing well." Jack was in a meeting but replied quickly, "Okay, I'll contact him." Ending the conversation, Jack left the meeting room and called Frank. Hearing Jack's voice, Frank smiled weakly. "I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Let's meet later when you're free. Frank, let's spend New Year's together this year." Jack's invitation was met with a wholehearted yes from Frank. "Sure. Just make sure you're not working overtime." Jack suddenly chuckled over the phone. "I'm definitely not staying late. I'll just take my work home if I have to." Frank snickered and urged him, all right, get moving. "I'm good here." Then there was something involving Henry, and his fans even managed to get him trending online. Henry's agent approached him for a chat, with Jenny present. The agent, Johnny, began to apologize on behalf of the fans. Jenny checked her phone and saw a video of Frank looking all beat up. Her face turned pale. "When did this happen?" Jenny asked. Johnny glanced at Jenny's expression, feeling uneasy and guilty. "It's been almost an hour now. Those fans are still at the police station." Jenny tried calling Frank, but he didn't pick up. She grabbed her coat without a word and rushed out, driving away. Henry, listening to the sound of the car leaving, turned to Johnny and said, "Johnny, this is risky." Johnny sighed deeply. "This is the quickest way to make Jenny choose. Even though she's here, don't forget, she's still married to Frank. If it gets out one day, how do you think you'll clear your name?" On her way to find Frank, Jenny's mind was filled with her disheveled image. Frank hadn't told her he was back from Lhasa, nor did he ask her to pick him up. With all this stuff happening, he didn't call her, not even a single message. And then it hit Jenny. Ever since they split at the airport that day, Frank hadn't been in touch. Frank never used to go this long without contacting her. It felt like something was slipping away. Before she reached the police station, she saw Frank dragging his suitcase on the sidewalk across the street. She quickly turned around to catch up with him. "Frank." Hearing a familiar voice, Frank turned, seeing Jenny in the driver's seat. His mind went blank for a moment. It had only been about a week, but Jenny seemed so different, unfamiliar, like a stranger. Jenny saw the blank, indifferent look in Frank's eyes. Her heart skipped a beat, and she quickly got out of the car, walked over to him, and took his suitcase, putting it in the trunk. "Why didn't you call me to pick you up when you got back?" Frank didn't answer, just got into the back seat, as if he didn't hear Jenny's question. Jenny paused for a moment, then got back into the car and started it up. She looked at Frank in the rearview mirror. He was facing the window, looking exhausted, pale, and his lips were pretty colorless. Taking a closer look, Frank had lost weight. You could clearly see his jawline bones. "Frank, are you hungry? We could grab a bite." Frank didn't move and simply said, "Not hungry," then closed his eyes. Taking a deep breath, Jenny asked, "Are you hurt?" Frank slowly opened his eyes. So Jenny had seen the post, rushing over in a fluster. Was it for him? No way. It must have been because the fan behavior tied back to Henry, right? If you're here to advocate for Henry, don't bother. His voice was calm and devoid of warmth. To Jenny, it sounded strange. The fans did what they did, they should take responsibility. It has nothing to do with Henry. No sooner had Jenny finished speaking, she heard a faint, mocking laugh from the back seat. "I'm not here to speak for Henry." It was a brief reply, like he didn't want to say another word to her. Back at home, they hadn't even unpacked when Henry showed up. It looked like he had burns on his cheek, still wrapped in gauze. Wearing hospital clothes, he seemed weak as he walked in. Johnny helped him, struggling a bit, as Jenny ignored Frank and hurried over to assist. "Why'd you come all the way here, barely wearing anything?" Henry clutched Jenny's hand, weakly saying, "I came to apologize to Frank. It's my fault for not keeping the fans in check, letting them act like that. Frank, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Please don't hold it against them." Before Frank could respond, Jenny said, "This isn't your fault, why apologize? Frank isn't blaming you." Henry shook his head slightly. "It's Frank's choice to forgive or not, but I have to apologize." Frank looked at him coldly, glanced at Jenny, and then his eyes landed on their intertwined hands. Seeing Frank's gaze, Jenny felt her hands getting hot. She didn't know whether to release or keep holding. "Henry, you're Henry, fans are fans. No need for your apology, but I won't forgive them. Frank, they're just young. Give them another chance, please." Frank frowned, took a deep breath, and spoke firmly. "Why would I? Are you their parent? Or is this all at your command?" When Frank finished speaking, Henry's face went pale, his body swaying, and Johnny quickly spoke up in Henry's defense. "Frank, you're right. Henry is Henry, fans are fans. We're here apologizing wholeheartedly. No need to vent at us." Jenny frowned, looking at Frank, backing Henry. "Frank, Henry's not like that." Frank didn't care to respond. He just turned and went upstairs. Jenny personally escorted Henry next door. Frank asked the nanny to make him a bowl of noodles with greens. He was a bit hungry, yet nothing clicked his appetite. After eating, Jenny still hadn't returned. Frank headed to Jenny's study to grab the property deed, accidentally knocking her bear figurine off the shelf. The figurine shattered on the floor, spilling heart-shaped notes everywhere. Curiosity got the better of Frank. He opened one and it read, "Day 101 post-breakup. The person I marry isn't Henry, and it seems like it doesn't even matter who." Frank picked up another open note. It said, "At wedding, I caught the bride's bouquet. When I turned around, I saw Frank's sparkling eyes. Impulsively, I confessed my feelings while holding the bouquet. Unsurprisingly, he accepted. Although he later tried to act hesitant, I knew he still loved me. He just needed a little more drama to satisfy his ego. After all, he's the partner my parents hoped for, so I should at least put on a show." Frank's hands were trembling, and tears suddenly streamed down. He reached for another note. It read, "As our parents wished, we got married." Frank was thrilled, but as I looked at him lying next to me, I wished it was Henry. A small resentment grew inside me. If it weren't for him, maybe my parents wouldn't have disliked Henry so much. I neglected him, but he acted like he didn't care, which was really dull. Frank folded these 3 notes and took them, putting all the others back inside the figure. The head was just a snap-on, it wasn't broken. He twisted it back in place and returned it as if nothing happened. All those years of love were just a joke. Jenny disappeared for 2 days. When she came back, Frank had just finished opening his visa package. He discreetly put everything away. Jenny seemed preoccupied and didn't notice what Frank was doing. He packed up and headed downstairs, bag in hand, when Jenny called out, "Frank, we need to talk." Frank turned to her and calmly asked, "What's up?" "Henry attempted suicide. He's just been saved." I need your help with something. Frank paused, then walked over and sat down. Tell me what you need. Jenny bit her lip, clearly conflicted. Frank just quietly waited for her to continue. I need us to get a temporary divorce. Henry needs me right now. Frank looked at her silently, then nodded slightly. Okay. Do we need to get a divorce certificate? Frank asked. Yes. Then let's go now. On the way to the civil affairs office, Jenny's heart felt empty and anxious. Frank agreed so calmly, without asking when they'd get back together. Did he trust her that much? Once he recovers, we'll get our certificate back, Jenny said. Frank nodded slightly. Yeah, I understand. As he spoke, he was also booking a flight. With the divorce done, he could leave on the afternoon flight. It conveniently didn't require any layovers. The divorce was processed quickly. Jenny said, Frank, you also need to make a public statement. Say we were divorced before, and Henry didn't break up our marriage. Holding the divorce certificate, Frank looked at Jenny and slowly smiled, though his eyes felt stingingly wet as he smiled. Okay. After dropping him home, Jenny headed to see Henry, probably to tell him she was divorced. Frank had already packed his things, quickly loading his suitcase. He confirmed all documents were in place and had his packed stuff ready for the movers. Jack took time off to drive him to the airport. After Frank went through airport security, Jack headed back to work. Once aboard the plane, Frank posted online. Jenny and I have been divorced. Best wishes to her and Henry, tagging both Jenny and Henry. When the flight attendant announced the plane would soon take off and to switch phones to airplane mode, Frank typed a short post. Just 2 words. Goodbye. Henry cried to Jenny, saying he never got over her. He just pretended to forget but went crazy with jealousy seeing Jenny and Frank together. He hated himself for being so weak back then and not persisting. He said he wouldn't survive without Jenny. Since they split, he's been depressed and struggled with insomnia. He pleaded with Jenny to pity him. Frank, even after the divorce, was still seen as the privileged son of the Whites. Henry was not, he had nothing. Jenny was his entire world. If Jenny didn't want him, Henry felt no will to live. Jenny still cared for Henry. She never fully let go. While they might not rekindle their old flame, she couldn't let Henry die. He needed to live. She rushed to the hospital right after getting the divorce certificate. Henry held her tightly, but her thoughts kept drifting to Frank's teary smile. She wondered what Frank was doing right then. While Henry followed the doctor's orders and rested, Jenny messaged Frank on WeChat. Frank, what are you doing? He didn't reply, as if the message vanished. She sent another, wanna have hot pot tonight? It's been a while. Still no answer. She checked online, it was quiet. Frank hadn't posted the statement. She thought of quickly going home while Henry slept. Before she left the elevator, she saw Frank had posted, "We've been divorced. Blessings to Jenny and Henry," tagging them both. Frank had disabled comments. Suddenly, her phone lit with calls. Jenny answered her mom's call, explaining it was fake, they were only temporarily divorced. Her mom yelled at her, saying to contact Frank and that they should come home for dinner. Jenny agreed and tried calling Frank. His phone was off. Looking back at Frank's posts, she noticed he had added another, just the words goodbye. She felt a wave of panic as she hurried back to the villa. The housekeeper was off today. The whole place was silent. She called out for Frank, but got no response. She glanced at the entryway and noticed the spot where Frank usually left his bag was empty. She opened the shoe cabinet. Frank's shoes were gone. Only hers and a few disposable slippers remained. Suddenly panicking, she looked back at where the wedding photo used to hang, still bare. She remembered Frank saying he needed to clean the frame. That was days ago, how hasn't he finished yet? Calling Frank's name, she rushed upstairs. The bedroom was empty, Frank's clothes had vanished from the closet. The dressing table was bare, his skincare products gone. She hurried into the walk-in closet. It was all empty. No way. Just a few hours, how did he clear out so fast? She thought about how Frank had been packing the study. Those boxes she'd seen, all gone. The bookshelves and desk were empty. Standing in the study, her whole body felt weak. She dialed Frank's number repeatedly, only to hear it was turned off. Frantically, she called again and went into the bathroom, realizing it was all spotless. Frank had moved everything out. She texted Frank. "Frank, where are you? We're only fake divorced, it's fake." Jenny figured Frank must have moved to another house. She drove around to all their apartments and villas. Not a trace of Frank anywhere. Coming back home, she noticed an agent looking at the house next door. She quickly ran over. "This house isn't for sale." The agent looked puzzled, then double-checked the address, confirming they weren't in the wrong place. "This is Frank's house, right?" "I'm his wife," Jenny said. The agent frowned slightly, then said, "Ma'am, Frank told us he's divorced and doesn't have a wife. He's entrusted all his properties to us for sale." Jenny wanted to explain but suddenly remembered. It had been days since Frank said he was listing the property with an agent. Had he told them he was divorced that long ago? "When did he instruct you?" The young agent, seeing Jenny's dark expression, answered truthfully. "Over 10 days ago." Jenny stood frozen. She'd never said she wanted a divorce, but Frank already wanted it back then? She couldn't believe it. Frank must have hidden away in anger. As she turned to leave, the agent said, "Are you Jenny?" Jenny paused. "Did he leave a message for me?" "Frank said the house is temporarily lent to a friend of yours, and if anyone comes to view it, contact you to find another place for your friend." Jenny replied coldly, "I'll buy this house. No need for viewings. And all his other properties, I'll buy them all. Bring the contracts tomorrow." Jenny left quickly. She called Jack, but he didn't pick up. Driving to Jack's company, she found Jack just leaving a meeting, his expression indifferent. "Congrats, Jenny, back to being single." Hearing Jack's sarcastic tone, Jenny knew he must know where Frank was. "Where's Frank?" Getting straight to the point, Jack looked at her with an amused sneer. What does Jenny want with her ex-husband? Honestly, so interesting. You could ignore him as a spouse, but after a divorce, you come looking? "Jack, ours was a fake divorce, an agreement between us." Jack laughed outright. "Jenny, a divorce is a divorce. Once you go to the Civil Affairs Bureau and get the certificate, it's real. What do you think your marriage was? Who did you think Frank was? He chased after you for years. Is that not enough? Should he also put up with humiliation? So you played around and he's supposed to wait like a fool, get divorced, go have your fun, and then wait to remarry?" Jenny felt anger rising at his words. "Jack, you're too much." Jack, raising an eyebrow with disdain, replied, "If you don't want to hear it, Jenny, please leave." Taking a deep breath, Jenny steadied herself. "Where did he go? Tell you so you can chase after him?" "Jenny, could you actually tell Frank's parents and sister you got a fake divorce for another man? If you dare, I'll tell you where he is." Jenny's heart sank deeply. "He went back to London?" Jack didn't speak, and Jenny shook her head, mumbling to herself. "Impossible, visas take time. Did he plan on leaving all along?" Jack simply looked at her without responding. Knowing about Frank's condition, when the tumor was discovered, and during his wife's betrayal with Henry, he understood how disappointed and desperate Frank must have felt to quietly, subtly, leave this relationship behind. "He planned this for a while?" Jenny asked. Jack concealed what he knew. "I don't know." Studying Jack's expression, Jenny already understood. Frank's leaving wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was carefully planned. He had wanted to leave her well before now. Why? Frank loved her so much. How could he suddenly decide to leave? Thinking of this, she called her secretary, instructing to book a flight to London. The secretary reminded her over the phone. "Jenny, the board meeting is this Friday." Jenny paused. It clashed with the board meeting, and with the prior issue involving Henry, the shareholders were quite displeased. She had to attend this board meeting. Book it for the day after the board meeting. After calling Jenny, Susan attempted to reach Frank with no luck and, worried, visited the villa. Jenny sat dejectedly on the sofa. The place felt empty. Frank's shoes and bags were gone, as were his clothes. Even the wedding photo was taken down. Her face changed drastically as she rushed towards Jenny, not even bothering with her shoes. "Jenny, where's Frank? Are you really in such a rush to kick him out?" So eager to get that woman to move in? Susan was on the verge of losing it. Jenny looked up at her mom's furious face and let out a sarcastic laugh. Frank's gone. Where'd he go? London. Don't worry, I'll get him back. Jenny promised, hand held high. Susan opened her mouth but couldn't speak. She turned around and saw the divorce papers tossed on the couch. She rushed over, grabbed them, and seeing the stamp, threw the papers at Jenny's head in a rage. Jenny, you must be out of your mind. This is your idea of a fake. Fake? Who's faking here? After yelling at Jenny, Susan texted Frank, her voice cracking by the end. She said it was her pressure that made Jenny marry him. She watched Frank grow up, and even if he's not a son-in-law, he's still like a son. Jenny did him wrong, and she vowed she'd make her apologize to him and more. Henry got discharged. He had tried calling Jenny countless times from the hospital, but she didn't answer. He felt a bit panicked, but thinking about the divorce papers Jenny showed him, he quickly calmed down. He asked Johnny to handle his discharge and headed to the villa alone. Seeing the villa doors open from where Jenny and Frank lived, he had the driver pull in. No sign of Frank inside, just a very downcast Jenny. Henry subtly frowned. He'd seen this side of Jenny before, back when they broke up years ago. But now? Was it because of the divorce from Frank? When she was at the hospital earlier, she wasn't like this. Where's Frank? Did he move out? The second Henry asked, Susan's voice came from upstairs, and he looked up to see her slowly descending the stairs. Even if Frank left, don't think you can just move in. Henry. Seeing Susan, Henry's heart skipped a beat, but he kept a straight back and greeted her softly. Mom. Susan was still seething with anger, racing down the stairs, clearly intent on confronting Henry. Jenny quickly spoke, let's go. Johnny helped Henry out quickly. Susan followed them, watching Henry go to the villa next door. She asked Jenny who let him live there. Jenny was speechless. Susan took a deep breath and said, I see now. I finally get why you never really warmed up to Frank all these years. You're punishing me because of Henry dragging Frank into it. Humiliating him like this. I truly regret it. Jenny saw her mom's eyes practically red with anger. She tried to explain, Frank agreed to it. Susan let out a slight laugh. Frank is so decent he'd agree to his wife having her first love stay in his home. You're a hell of a wife. It's exactly what you deserve. If you like Henry so much, go be with him. But Jenny, if you end up together, remember to pay back those $700. After the long flight, Frank finally landed at Heathrow. He hadn't even collected his luggage when his sister called. Frank thought just his sister was picking him up, but at the exit, he saw his sister, her husband, and their parents all there. Tears welled up as he bit his lip, rushing with his suitcase towards them. Dad, Mom, why are you here? Frank's mom looked at him tenderly. Frank, you've lost weight. His brother-in-law chimed in, they've missed you. Once they heard you're coming, they couldn't just stay home. Frank looked at his brother-in-law, who handed him flowers softly saying, Welcome home, Frank. Frank took the bouquet and hugged him. Thanks, bro. Melody, seeing him like that, gently ruffled his hair. Coming alone to London, looking worn and thin, something serious must have happened between him and Jenny. But he didn't share, so they didn't pry. Back in the familiar warmth of home, surrounded by family who cared the most, Frank's spirits lifted. His sister even threw a little party to celebrate his return, leaving Frank amused. I'm not a teenager anymore. This is embarrassing. Melody smiled affectionately at him. You'll always be my little brother. Frank's parents nodded, in our hearts too. His brother-in-law came out with coffee, smiling, in mine as well. Their young nephew ran out from the room, tossing aside his toys, shouting, Uncle, me too, in my heart too. Frank scooped him up, chuckling and tousling his hair. After a bite to eat, Frank went to bed, needing to shake off the exhaustion and jet lag. Waking up under the bright sunshine, he grabbed his phone. It was full of unread messages. Aside from letting Jack know he arrived safely, he'd ignored all of Susan's and Jenny's texts. He opened Susan's chat. So many messages, some with voice notes, and finally, an apology asking for him to confirm he made it okay. Taking a deep breath, Frank video called Susan back. After all, even if he and Jenny are divorced, the Millers and the Whites had ties going way back. They might continue crossing paths. The elders never wronged him, and he couldn't ignore Manners as the younger one. Susan picked up almost immediately. Frank still called her mom, then said, "I'm sorry to you and Dad for keeping you in the dark. Jenny and I are divorced." Susan was quiet for a moment and then said, "We wronged you. Are you in London now?" Frank nodded. Susan apologized on behalf of Jenny, but said he didn't need to forgive her. "Mom, don't feel guilty. It's just that Jenny and I aren't meant to be. It's fine for us to stop here. Everything's still okay." Frank could tell Susan felt really guilty around him. He didn't say much and just mentioned he was going to get breakfast before ending the video call. He then opened Jenny's message. Frank saw the one that said the divorce was fake. He smirked bitterly and didn't reply to Jenny. The divorce was done, there wasn't much point in staying in touch. As he was about to get out of bed, Jenny's call came in. He hung up. She called again, he hung up again. She called a third time. Frank was starting to get annoyed, so he finally answered. "What's up?" Jenny heard Frank's cold tone and felt a pang in her heart. He sounded like a stranger. "Frank, are you in London?" Frank frowned and repeated, "If you got something to say, just say it." Jenny was taken aback. She paused before asking, "Frank, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do I mean? Why did you leave home without saying anything?" Frank chuckled lightly, feeling a bit cynical. In the past, when he'd be gone for a day or 2 or 3, Jenny never seemed to care. Now she wanted to ask, "Do I have to report my whereabouts to my ex-wife?" Jenny said firmly, "Our divorce is fake. Didn't we agree on that?" Frank's expression darkened as he replied coolly, "Jenny, we got a divorce certificate that means we're divorced. Legally, we have no relationship." Hearing Frank's words, Jenny crushed the wine glass in her hand. Wine and blood mixed, staining the carpet. "Frank, you tricked me. You lied to me." Frank bit his lip, his vision blurred. How could he have tricked her? If there was any trickery, it was him who got tricked. "Jenny, I didn't make you go to Henry. I didn't make Henry take those actions. The gossip in town made me a joke. I never criticized you, never questioned you, never fought with you. I never pushed for this divorce. You asked for it and I agreed. How is that me lying to you?" By the end, Frank's voice was choked. Jenny felt a pang in her heart. She had never heard Frank speak so much at once. She had never seen him so upset. But through his words, she understood. "Henry and I are in the past. There's nothing between us. The person I love is you, Frank. I love you." Hearing Jenny say she loved him didn't make Frank happy. It made him feel sad. Since the day they married, Jenny had never sincerely said those words to him. Turns out she could say it after all. "But Jenny, I don't love you anymore. Let's not contact each other again. I don't want to hear your voice, and I don't want to know anything more about you." Frank was about to hang up when Jenny said, "Frank, we need to talk face to face. There's a board meeting on Friday. I booked a flight to London for Saturday. Let's talk when I get there. Blame me or hate me, it's all my fault. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. Frank, we're still husband and wife." Frank said calmly, "We're not husband and wife anymore, Jenny. Don't make me hate you." He hung up. Undeterred, Jenny kept calling. He simply blocked her. The words had already been spoken. The party was happening that night at the castle. Frank gave a speech and everyone else was dancing and having a great time. But before the party ended, Frank fainted and was rushed to the hospital. His tumor had burst, requiring emergency surgery. The family waited for over 10 hours outside the operating room. Frank's mom wanted to call Jenny, but Melody stopped her. "Mom, don't. Frank doesn't want to see her." Frank's mom didn't have time to figure out what exactly had happened. Her whole heart was with Frank. Frank made it through. He woke up in the ICU a day later. His situation could be worse. The Whites had a top-notch medical team, so Frank went home to recover. Frank's mom took care of him closely. While sorting through his luggage, she found the divorce papers and the medical diagnosis from over a month ago, and it broke her heart. Such a big thing, and he hadn't told them in advance. If they hadn't come to London in time, if something had happened mid-flight or on the way, what would Frank have done? Seeing the date on the divorce papers, Frank's mom took a photo and contacted someone back home to find out why they divorced. Upon learning it was because of Henry, Frank's mom was trembling with anger. "I won't let him get away with this," Melody said. "Mom, let's deal with it after Frank's better." If Jenny hadn't been irresponsible, that little star wouldn't have had anything to do with Frank. Ultimately, it's Jenny's fault. Frank's mom lamented. Frank put his whole heart into her. "I should never have agreed to that marriage." Melody gently patted Frank's mom's arm to comfort her. On Saturday morning, City was foggy and snowy by the time Jenny headed to the airport. All flights were delayed with a strong snowstorm expected, so flying wasn't possible for the next few days. Jenny canceled her flight and got her driver to take her to our city, thinking she could fly from there. But unfortunately, a car accident on the highway made her miss her flight, and with the snowstorm hitting our city too, Jenny was stuck there. She called Frank, but couldn't get through. She tried a new number, and after it rang for a while, someone finally picked up. "Frank, there's a snowstorm here. The plane can't take off, so it'll be a few days before I can get there." There was silence on the other end, no sound for a long time, and Jenny frowned a bit. "Frank, are you listening?" Vivian listened to the call, watching Frank sleep soundly in bed. Her eyes were cold, like 1,000-year-old ice. After a long silence, she eventually spoke in a low voice. "Frank's asleep. I'll tell him when he wakes up. May I ask who's calling?" The voice was unfamiliar. It wasn't Melody or the Whites picking up Frank's calls. At that instant, Jenny felt a rush of blood. "Who are you?" Jenny demanded sharply. Vivian recognized the anger in her voice, but just chuckled indifferently, filled with mockery. "Who do you think I am? The person here with him right now." Vivian spoke unhurriedly, slowly, and calmly. Jenny's mind raced with all sorts of images. She and Frank were just pretending to be divorced. Yet, in just a few days, there was already someone else by Frank's side. "Who exactly are you?" "Stay away from Frank." Vivian curled her lips, then hung up the phone. She looked up at Frank in bed. As she was about to put the phone away, she noticed Frank quietly watching her. Vivian felt a bit awkward. She had answered his call without permission and had mocked Jenny. Frank might be upset. "Frank, I'm sorry." Frank smiled slightly. "Why sorry? I should be thanking Miss Vivian for performing that surgery and saving my life." Thinking about that surgery still made Vivian a bit anxious. It was the most dangerous surgery she'd ever performed, and the patient on the table was the boy she'd secretly liked for years. If she hadn't saved him, she probably never would have returned to the surgery room again. That tumor was dangerous. "You should have had surgery back home." Frank looked at her, and though this woman was not only his surgeon but also his sister's best friend, Frank never dared to get too close to her. The way she looked at him always felt invasive. Back then, he was young and scared without knowing why. In retrospect, it was her determined affection. Frank's sister had mentioned Vivian's way of doing things, and Frank had an idea. "I'm divorced from Jenny." Vivian looked at him. He hadn't told anyone, but all these years, she'd been following Frank's life closely. She knew about the divorce before the Whites did. She also learned about the tumor in his head. So, she returned to the country coincidentally on the same flight. His mood was bad, and he hadn't noticed her. If he had paid attention, he would have seen they were sitting very close. Back at the Whites, she waited for Frank to tell them to call her for his checkup, but the call never came. At the dance, she asked him to dance, and then he fainted. Taking him to the hospital, her legs were weak. She kept telling herself to stay calm to perform the surgery. As Frank listened to her calm recounting, he furrowed his brow slightly, puzzled. "Miss Vivian, you already knew about this?" Vivian gave a slight smile, carelessly taking a pen from her pocket. "Aunt saw your divorce papers in your luggage, so now the whole family knows." Frank was momentarily speechless. "Is that so?" Vivian noted Frank's data for the day. Hearing his words, she slowly glanced over. Frank responded, "It's nothing." The room's atmosphere tensed, and Vivian abruptly spoke. "Just call me Vivian, Miss Vivian." Sounds too distant. Frank's eyes shifted slightly. "Is that appropriate?" Vivian smirked, raising an eyebrow at Frank. I don't want you as a brother. Choose between Vivian and Miss Vivian. Frank sighed softly, resigned to comply. The lifesaver's words were law. Vivian closed her notebook, putting the pen back. How about a little test run of my name? Vivian asked seriously. Frank couldn't help but shoot her a look, causing her to laugh. Looks like your eye movements are normal. Rest up. When Vivian mentioned Frank waking up, his mom came rushing up, eyes full of concern, asking if he felt unwell, hungry, or needed water. Each question carried worry. Frank felt both guilty and loving. Mom, I'm fine. Vivian said my recovery is going well. Frank's mom held his hand tightly. With Vivian's words in mind, Frank hesitated but decided to speak up. Mom, Jenny and I are divorced. Sorry for not telling you sooner. Frank's mom nodded softly. We already know. But why didn't you tell us something this big? I could handle it, Frank insisted. Afterward, needing rest, Frank sipped some porridge before lying back down. After his mom left, Frank picked up his phone and saw messages from an unknown number. Frank, who was that woman? Did you want the divorce all along? Why? You liked me a lot. Why? I bought a ticket leaving from Z-City. I'll be in London the morning after tomorrow. We can meet up and chat. Frank took a deep breath. In his current state, he really didn't want to see Jenny. Flipping through his WhatsApp, he suddenly saw a name pop up. Vivian. When did I add her on WhatsApp? He sent a question mark. Vivian? Quick reply came back. It's me. Frank read the two words, unsure of what to say. He saw the typing dots from the other side, and after a while another message came through. Anything up? Frank replied, nothing. After a moment, Vivian sent another message. Really nothing? Do you want me to tell Melody to find you a quiet place to recover? Frank was speechless. Did you install a camera in my brain during surgery or something? Vivian couldn't help but chuckle at Frank's message. The next day, he talked to Melody and took Frank to his estate. It wasn't too far, convenient for the Whites to visit him, but Jenny wouldn't be able to see Frank. Nobody from the Whites wanted Frank to meet Jenny again, especially not when Frank was this weak. It wouldn't help his recovery. Jenny rushed to London knowing the Whites' address. She went directly there. Melody's face turned sour when Jenny showed up, but she still let her in. As soon as Jenny walked in, she noticed that only Frank managed a slight professional smile while talking to her. The rest of the Whites were stone-faced. Jenny, what brings you to London? Frank's dad threw out the question, leaving Jenny tongue-tied. The Whites knew she and Frank were divorced, of course. Frank wouldn't keep quiet about that. Thinking it through, she answered in a serious tone. Mom, Dad, I came to take Frank back. Frank's mom scoffed. You're divorced, we can't accept you calling us Mom and Dad. Besides, since you're divorced, Frank is a free man. What makes you think you can take him back? Recalling her own mom's words, she wondered if she had the guts to say to Frank's mom and dad that the divorce was fake. She couldn't bring herself to say it was a fake divorce. After a pause, she finally said, I know you have every reason to blame me, but there's a misunderstanding between Frank and me. I never wanted to divorce Frank. Frank's mom wasn't going to sugarcoat it. She sneered, lifting her gaze. A misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? You're saying no one forced you to get the divorce papers? Jenny looked at Frank's mom, bit her lip, then said firmly, Mom, Frank and I had a fake divorce. We planned it. Melody couldn't listen any longer, her expression turning icy. Jenny, was that your plan? Was it Frank who suggested a fake divorce? Or was it you? Jenny couldn't say a word. Melody chuckled lightly, not talking. Huh? So it was you who proposed the fake divorce? Frank's a kind guy. He's young and studied in the country. He hasn't met many people, and his heart was set on you. You knew he liked you, loved you, so you took advantage of his love to push him around? You think we're all dead? Get out. Jenny watched Melody's anger, feeling a chill. She bit her lip and said, I know I did Frank wrong, but I love him. You can do whatever to me, but let me see Frank. We need to talk. The Whites stayed silent. Frank forced a professional smile as he looked at Jenny. Jenny, it's not us keeping you from seeing Frank. He's out taking a break, not home. Call him yourself and arrange to meet. You're both adults now. It's up to you. We're about to have lunch. Are you staying or? Jenny saw their expressions. Frank must really not be home if he said so himself. Naturally, she wouldn't stick around for lunch. After Jenny left, she tried calling and texting Frank, but it was like sending messages into a void. She waited around the White's place but never saw Frank. That's when she started believing he really wasn't home. Frank learned that Jenny was in London. In his weak state, he didn't want to see Jenny, so he avoided her. More than 10 days passed and Melody dropped by. Has Jenny contacted you again? She hasn't left yet. Still hanging around our family's place every day. Frank looked at Melody, taking a deep breath. Sometimes I really want to call the cops. Melody patted him gently. If it weren't for Uncle's sake, I would have called them already. How are you recovering? You look better than a few days ago. As she spoke, Melody sized Frank up, her expression shifting to a slight frown. You even look a bit healthier. Frank chuckled awkwardly. Vivian's cooking is pretty good. Lately, she's been force-feeding me late-night snacks. After Frank mentioned it, Melody seemed puzzled. What did you say? Vivian can cook? She knows how to make food? Frank paused for a moment, then asked Melody. Doesn't she? She's been freeloading at our place since she was a teen. She always said she couldn't cook, that she came over just to eat. I've never had a single dish made by her. What's she been making for you? Frank was surprised to learn this about Vivian. Seeing his sister in a jealous rage, Frank chose to keep quiet. Melody took a look around and asked, "Where's Vivian?" And with that, she got up to go find her. Vivian was actually downstairs in the kitchen. Melody, used to finding her on the second or third floor, had come straight upstairs without checking the kitchen. Now she ran down to find Vivian wearing glasses, sleeves rolled up, apron tied, fully focused on slicing fish and removing bones. Melody came closer and saw the slices were super thin, almost see-through. What are you making? Seafood porridge, Vivian responded casually. Melody grabbed her by the neck, looking dramatically shocked. You can make seafood porridge? I fed you for so many years and haven't even had your fried rice. You jerk. Vivian gently pushed her away and said with a knowing look, You think you deserve to eat my cooking, Melody? We've been friends for ages, and if you were worth it, you'd have eaten already. Go reflect on why you haven't. Melody squinted, watching her intently. You're not joking? Vivian adjusted her glasses with the back of her hand, then laughed. I'm not joking about this. Melody took a deep breath, quietly sizing up her longtime friend, thinking it through seriously. She couldn't come up with a reason to argue. He just got divorced. Right, he's divorced now. Melody smirked. All these years and I never noticed, you little… Vivian ignored her, chuckling carelessly. As Melody drove away from the estate, she suddenly remembered she hadn't actually done what she'd come for, to suggest Frank meet Jenny and then send her off. Her lurking by the door every day was irritating. Thinking of this, Melody turned the car back. Frank nodded at his sister's suggestion. That afternoon, Frank was in relatively good spirits. He changed clothes, put on a hat, and Vivian drove him to a cafe, waiting nearby. Frank settled in the cafe, ordered a dessert, and sent Jenny the address. It was a bit of a drive, so it took Jenny over 20 minutes to arrive. She marched straight, overseeing Frank in the corner. Frank. He looked at her calmly. Sit down, what would you like to drink? Jenny turned to order a coffee. Before she could speak, Frank said, Melody told me you've been outside my house waiting for me. Half a month and you're still not home. Henry's done with his suicidal stunts? Jenny paused and then said, So, you're mad at me over Henry? Frank chuckled softly. I should have known better than to bring that up. Jenny, I never thought talking to you would feel like talking to a wall. I say one thing, you answer something irrelevant. Her face fell at Frank's words. She quietly observed him. He seemed to have gained some weight, but looked somewhat frail. He was wearing a hat which wasn't like the old Frank. She was about to ask, but Frank cut her off. I'm here. Say whatever you need. Ask anything you want. He glanced at his watch. I'm a bit tired. I'd like to leave in 40 minutes. Jenny's lips trembled. So, you don't plan to come back with me, do you? Frank nodded. That's right. Why? Frank laughed out loud, furrowing his brows at her. Why do you think, Jenny? Why wouldn't I come back? Because of Henry? There's nothing between us. I just helped him because of an accident. Really? Did you need to divorce me to help him? I asked you to join me at the hospital, and you didn't say a word before going straight to City R. We planned for Lessa, and you left for a coffee, never showed up. Didn't you say you'd meet me up after? Jenny spoke quietly. I'm sorry, that was my mistake. Frank shook his head slightly. He didn't care anymore. Jenny couldn't mend it with a simple apology. Divorce meant they were better off apart, no apologies necessary. I'm not after an apology. I'm just giving an example. Jenny, my heart's been dead. I don't need an apology. I don't want forgiveness. I don't want to see you anymore. Frank's voice was rough, while Jenny bit her lip, her eyes reddening. Frank, why did your love fade so quickly? I'm unprepared and defenseless. Jenny, seriously? At least I loved you. What about you? You walked all over me and then had the nerve to act affectionate in front of my family? How can you claim to love me? Jenny froze, stunned by Frank's words. Was she really mistreating him in their marriage? She hadn't. She hadn't stayed in touch with Henry for years. She kept to the boundaries of a married woman. Henry might have been special, but never above Frank. She just wanted Henry to live well. There are misunderstandings between us. I can apologize for Henry, but I really love you, or I wouldn't be here. Frank covered his face with his hands, eventually lowering them. I'd love to ignore Henry, but I can't. Before the mess, how often did we travel? Did you ever plan an anniversary? Organize my birthday? We talked about wishes in Lessa years past, and it never happened. It took Henry's unexpected incident for me to see clearly. What I'd been holding on to was all for nothing, worthless. Jenny felt suffocated by the weight on her chest. She had no words or defenses against Frank's accusations. So when I talked about a fake divorce, you were thinking about a real one when you went to get the divorce papers? That's right. I'd already lined up a lawyer to talk divorce, but I hadn't made up my mind yet. Then you suggested a fake divorce. Jenny, we were destined to split up. Jenny felt regret. If I'd known you felt this way, I wouldn't have suggested a fake divorce. Well, I'm glad we're done. Frank sighed with relief. Jenny, let's end it here. No one would believe you love me with the way you've acted. Stop shouting slogans, it's nauseating. Let's just keep things cordial when we run into each other. After Frank finished speaking, Jenny shook her head repeatedly. Frank, it's not like that, not at all. I was wrong before. Give me another chance, I'll change, I promise I will. She spoke desperately, her words jumbled. Frank felt a sudden wave of disgust. I should go. You should too. Frank was about to leave, but Jenny held on to him. He was too weak to struggle, so he sat there quietly. He slowly took off his hat, revealing a bald head with a surgical scar. It looked like a centipede. Jenny's face turned pale with shock. What happened to you? Frank gave a sad smile. Jenny, the day I called you to the hospital, it was because they diagnosed a brain tumor. I needed immediate surgery, needed a family member's signature. I might have died on the operating table, but you went to see Henry. Jenny stepped back, shaking her head. Why didn't you tell me? What would telling you have done? Jenny, would it have ended with you saying, Frank, you're even faking illness now? I'm lucky I got back in time. The attack happened when I was with family, and I lived. Jenny, I don't love you anymore. Stop bothering me. Jenny stood there like she'd been plunged into a cold hell. Looking at Frank's surgical scar, she realized she'd lost him for good. After facing life and death, Frank had completely let her go. He once loved her so much, but now he was done. She was frantic, her words chaotic. She wanted to keep him but had no more ways to do so. Frank, this isn't fair. You sentenced me without saying anything. It's not fair to me. Fair? Jenny, I didn't tell you I wanted a divorce and we got one. Just like you didn't tell me you married me without loving me. You were one thing and I was another. If you really break it down, it's me who was done wrong. Who's gonna give me back those 5 years? Jenny felt completely hopeless. She asked incredulously, "Did you see what was inside the bear's figure?" Frank didn't answer, just stared at her. His gaze pierced her like a sword, leaving her with nowhere to hide. "Frank, those don't count. Back then You can say back then doesn't count, but all 5 years of our marriage matched what you wrote and hid in that figure. I knew about your coldness and just hoped one day it'd change. That's all." Frank put his hat back on, picked up his bag, and stood up. He paid the bill and left the cafe. Vivian had already pulled the car around, waiting for him. Seeing him come out, Vivian got out, opened the car door, and buckled Frank in. She placed his bag in the back seat. Jenny watched this woman, remembered the voice on the phone, and rushed out to chase them. "Frank, who is she?" Vivian had just opened the door, but hearing Jenny's question, she responded icily, "I'm his admirer." "Got a problem with that, ex-wife?" If looks could kill, Jenny would have killed Vivian 1,000 times over. Vivian chuckled at Jenny, "Head back home soon. Don't want something bad happening in the UK. Do you?" Vivian's eyes were sharp. She loathed Jenny, had for 5 years, and found her even more unpleasant now. If Jenny continued to linger in London bothering Frank, the Whites might be unable to do anything, but Vivian could. Listening to Vivian, Frank spoke up, "Vivian, let's go." Since some older relatives weren't on social media much, Frank quickly posted a status update from the car to announce his divorce from Jenny. After that, he tucked away his phone and leaned back for a nap. "Feeling tired? Want to stretch out and sleep in the back?" Vivian asked with concern while driving. Frank opened his eyes and looked at her, smiling. "We're almost home. I can hang in there." His phone buzzed with WeChat messages, probably questions about the divorce. Too tired to answer, he decided to just turn it off. Henry logged into Jenny's alternate account and saw Frank's divorce announcement, sharing it again. Then someone speculated that Frank and Jenny's divorce was recent, not before, claiming it was to clear Henry's name from being the other man. Once that idea surfaced, people recalled seeing Frank and Jenny at the Civil Affairs office the day Frank posted the status. And Henry? He'd been with Jenny all along. Henry's agency needed to clear things up, and they needed Jenny to cooperate. Right now, only Jenny and Frank stepping up could defend Henry strongly. But Jenny went off the grid. Henry couldn't reach her, so his agency had no choice but to share Frank's post. They even mentioned that the rumor spreaders would get a lawyer's letter and all that. Jack knew about Frank fainting in London. He rushed there the moment he saw Frank in the ICU, and waited for him to recover before quickly heading to Hong Kong for a meeting. Jack was well aware of why Frank posted that update, the fake divorce with Jenny, and now the fake has turned real. Jenny's stuck in London and won't come back, and Jack has joked with Melody about it several times. Jenny screwed up, but Henry isn't much better. He keeps stirring the pot. If things weren't pre-planned, why did he call Jenny first when stuff went down? If Jenny went to the hospital, Frank would have had surgery in the country, and maybe it wouldn't have ended up in such a mess. Thinking about how Frank had an incident the day after he got to London, Jack felt a shiver down his spine. Now, seeing Henry and his agency spreading Frank's post online, Jack wanted to reply directly, but he decided to respect Frank's decision. He first contacted Melody. She was clear. Frank is kind-hearted, but the Whites, won't be pushed around. Melody told Jack not to call Frank, she'd talk to him face-to-face for better communication. Jack agreed. Melody approached Frank about Henry. Frank seemed indifferent. Melody said, "They can't find Jenny, so they're using you, Frank. Don't be so kind." Frank looked at Melody, having survived a brush with death, and said it didn't matter anymore. He told Melody he didn't care what she did and that he was just concentrating on recovering. He'd already given too much of himself in his relationship with Jenny. Since he let go, he wouldn't even spare a glance. Shortly after Henry shared the post, Jack clarified things online for Frank. He stated Frank was recovering post-surgery, and he'd handle the response. That post was part of the divorce deal. Frank had no choice. On the day of Henry's accident, Frank found out he had a tumor but couldn't wait for Jenny to be there for surgery since Henry's agent had whisked her away. Jack tagged Henry and his agency and asked why they contacted someone else's wife first rather than their own company leaders. Was this pre-arranged? Jack's post dropped two truths. The early divorce was fake, and the actual divorce happened on the post day. His questions also raised suspicion about Henry contacting Jenny and whether the accident was planned. Seeing Jack's update, Johnny was left speechless while Henry was so furious that he smashed his cup and cursed Jack. Who does he think he is? Meddling in other people's business? Johnny was deep in thought when Henry snapped at him. What are you gawking at? Think of a solution. Just as Johnny was about to respond, his phone rang. It was the boss calling for a meeting to discuss Henry's work assignments. Johnny felt a bit uneasy and asked boldly, "Boss, is there a new job plan?" Henry perked up to listen. They both heard a chuckle through the line. "Get over here fast. Every client wants to cancel with Henry's agency, and we need to pay damages because it's all Henry's fault." By the time Johnny and Henry arrived, the marketing and PR departments and the boss were all waiting in the conference room. As they walked in, the head of PR shot Johnny an accusing glare. "We aren't sitting idle here." But before we could respond, someone blew it up. "Seriously, Henry, why would you share Frank's post? You thought no one would notice? Divorce papers have dates." Henry hadn't dealt with such anger before and snapped back. "If we don't act, what's your brilliant plan, PR team?" "There was a plan," they replied, "but now it's too late. Brands want out." Has Henry reached Jenny yet? If she could show up to support or pay the penalties, there might be a chance. Jenny showed up over 2 weeks later. Someone spotted her by the river, and Henry rushed over but missed her. When he returned, he found her at their villa. Henry hugged her tightly. "Jenny, where have you been? How did you turn into this?" Jenny's gaze was distant, just looking quietly, neither resisting nor responding. After a while, Henry wept. "I was worried sick." Jenny felt numb. The image of Frank's scar kept appearing in her mind. If not for Frank being there early and getting lucky, his situation would have made her feel guilty forever. Frank once loved her so much he probably still did. But Henry's presence had made Frank disappointed in her. "Let's get married." Jenny's soft voice echoed in the empty villa. Henry froze, then with tears of joy embraced her tightly. "Yes, let's get married." Henry's contract with the company was finalized, though he had to pay a penalty. Susan had always said she disliked Jenny dating guys from the entertainment industry, so he figured he'd use this chance to step back from it all. He was busy setting up wedding arrangements, getting everything ready for the big day. He thought Jenny would be thrilled to join him in planning, but that wasn't the case. Jenny was often working late at the office and would get home only to crash right into bed. Every day, Henry prepared hangover soup and homemade snacks for when Jenny returned, but she hardly touched them. Even with a wedding on the horizon, the two of them still slept in separate rooms. It seemed like, even though marriage was the plan, Jenny was pulling further away from him. With the new year approaching, Henry bought gifts. He figured since they were going to get married, Jenny would eventually take him to meet the Millers. But as New Year's got closer, Jenny hadn't mentioned any plans about visiting them. Henry asked, "Are you going home for New Year's?" Jenny gave a slight nod. Henry waited for her to invite him, but she never did. She didn't even ask where he'd be for the holiday. "Did you tell your parents about the wedding?" Henry inquired. Jenny glanced up with a cold stare, showing no excitement for their future marriage. "Why should we tell them about our wedding?" she replied. Henry was puzzled and asked, "Jenny, what's wrong? Ever since you came back last time, you've been acting strangely." "Strange how?" Jenny queried. "You seem upset. Did something happen at work?" "You can talk to me," Henry offered supportively. Jenny just smiled faintly. "It's just that after all these years, I feel like I failed. That's all," Jenny remarked. Henry assumed she was talking about them and softly reassured her. "We'll be together every day from now on. Let's just leave the past behind." Jenny said nothing. On New Year's Eve, right as midnight struck, Jenny texted Frank. "Happy New Year, Frank." Frank deleted the message immediately. After New Year's, he heard from Jack that Jenny and Henry were getting married on May Day. Frank felt indifferent, realizing he had no feelings about it anymore. Henry planned the entire wedding himself. On the wedding day, Jenny invited no friends or family, but she did call the media. During the vows, Henry tearfully agreed to marry Jenny, talking about their long journey together. The officiant then turned to Jenny with cameras on her and asked if she'd say "I do." Coldly, she said, "I don't." Even though Jenny's friends weren't there, Henry had gone all out, inviting everyone he knew, leaving them all in shock. Henry was stunned too, his voice shaking. "Jenny, what are you saying?" "I said, I don't," she replied with a hint of sarcasm. Henry stumbled back, barely steadied by the officiant. "Why, Jenny, why?" Before Frank left, Jenny felt guilty, thinking she hadn't treated him well, and believed their relationship ended because Susan disapproved. But after Frank left, Susan revealed the $7 million that Henry had asked for and received from Susan. $7 million, the price for ending their love. If she had known, she would have never treated Frank the way she did. Henry's lies were at the root, he was the one to blame. How can someone full of lies have real love? She asked Henry. Henry, shaking his head with tearful eyes, said, "Is it because you fell for Frank? Is that why?" Hearing Frank's name only angered Jenny more. "Don't say his name. You don't deserve to." "Henry, our love ended long ago with your $7 million. How can you still talk about love?" Henry had almost forgotten asking for those millions to leave Jenny. He shook his head, grabbing Jenny's hand. "It wasn't like that, Jenny. Please forgive me, just this once. I really love you." Jenny shook her head and stepped back. "Henry, it's too late." The wedding was a trending topic. Henry the cheater, money grubber, and fraud. The public was all over it. Henry's big day became a joke. His agency dropped him and he faced massive debts, having to sell his house and car. Jenny returned to London and told Frank she'd avenged him. Frank understood what she meant. Henry got what he deserved. But the irony of it all was almost laughable. He and Henry were like two parallel lines that never intersected. If it weren't for Jenny, they wouldn't have even met. Strangers can't really hurt you, right? It's not possible. Jenny, don't you think your actions are just ridiculous, even laughable? Frank's tone was gentle, but the sarcasm in his eyes was blinding. Jenny was confused. She thought she had already gotten back at Henry and cut ties with him. So, why was Frank still upset? She frowned at Frank, eyes full of confusion and puzzlement. Seeing her like this, Frank felt his heart grow cold. When someone keeps apologizing to you, regardless of whether you forgive them or not, you might think they've apologized. Let's just move on and look forward. But suddenly you realize that this person has no idea what they're apologizing for. It's kind of sad. Someone who doesn't even know what they've done wrong keeps apologizing to you. "Frank, don't look at me like that." Frank took a deep breath and slowly lowered his eyelids. "Do you think you wronged me? Or did Henry wrong me?" When Frank asked this, Jenny froze. Frank continued, "What Henry does has nothing to do with me. We're just strangers. Do you really think everything you did to me was Henry's fault? Jenny, if you were a responsible woman and really cared about Henry, you wouldn't have married me. If you had any sense of duty, once you married me, you wouldn't take your frustration out on me because of your own incompetence. This has nothing to do with Henry. It's just an excuse for your wandering heart. You could say that if he hadn't taken the money and left without telling you the truth, you wouldn't be stuck on him. But if you were still stuck on him, you shouldn't have gotten married. If your heart was with someone else, why marry me? What am I? Just a tool for you to forget him or to appease your parents? Jenny, I never insisted on marrying you. It was you who came to me, yet you take out your incompetence on me. I thought your apology meant you understood why our marriage ended up like this. But now I know I was wrong. A person like you will never see their own mistakes. You only blame others. Don't ever show up in front of me again. I don't want to see your face. It disgusts me." Frank turned to leave, and Jenny quickly grabbed his arm. "Frank, don't go. I know it's all my fault. I wronged you." Vivian, seeing them struggle from the car, quickly got out and walked over. "Jenny, let go of him." Vivian's voice rang out, and Jenny turned to look at her, eyes filled with anger. "Who do you think you are?" Vivian's gaze was icy, and Frank frowned slightly, then looked at Jenny. "Forgot to mention, She's my girlfriend. No way. Jenny shook her head frantically. The last time she saw Vivian coming and going from the Whites with Frank, bringing him to see her, she had doubts. But back then, she thought Frank loved her too much to ever leave. Now Vivian was by Frank's side today. Jenny's denial was met with calm faces from both Vivian and Frank. Vivian naturally wrapped her arm around Frank, and Frank smiled a little, leaning down to kiss Vivian's lips. Vivian's eyes were full of affection. It was as if they had done this 1,000 times before, as natural as could be. Seeing this, Jenny's heart ached painfully. Why? Frank, after all these years, it's not possible. Frank frowned slightly, chuckling softly. No, I liked you for a few years, then got tricked into marrying you. In those years, you don't think I loved you like when we were first married, do you? What makes you think your coldness and distance are worth my day-to-day devotion? I'm done talking. Let's not meet again. It's nauseating. After Frank said this, Jenny let go, utterly heartbroken. Vivian linked arms with Frank as they got in the car. She looked back once. Jenny still stood there lost. Vivian frowned, sent a message, then drove away. Frank wasn't really affected. He looked at Vivian and asked, "What do you want for dinner?" "My treat." Vivian laughed as she drove. "Why? Wanna thank me?" Frank turned his head a bit towards her. He knew what was on her mind these past days. He wasn't ready for another relationship, not because he couldn't move on from Jenny, but because he wanted a break. He also had school prep coming up. Just now, using someone as a scapegoat, it was him who broke the ice first. Can't leave things vague. I'm planning to go to grad school. Not really ready to jump into another marriage. Then maybe we can just date, be girlfriend and boyfriend, Vivian said casually, and Frank chuckled. Sure. The two of them started dating secretly, keeping it from the Whites. Melody knew what Vivian was thinking, but thought Frank had just gotten divorced, so it might take some time. She didn't expect them to get together so quickly, so it was a surprise to her too. Much later, Frank found out that the time Jenny came to London, she had a car accident and hurt her leg. Susan and her crew even came to London. The Whites didn't invite them over, and Frank's mom secretly went to see a friend. The meeting didn't end on a happy note, putting some distance between the families. Frank didn't ask why. He focused on his studies, and Vivian was occasionally in surgery, but mostly busy managing her company. The next time he heard about the Millers was a call from Susan. She said, "Frank, can't you part with Jenny on good terms? Isn't it enough that Jenny lost a leg? Do you have to swallow up MF Group too?" Listening to Susan's accusations, Frank's mind flashed through a lot of memories. Things once thought to be solid crumbled upon closer inspection. Jenny's losses have nothing to do with me. I didn't cut off her leg. But she went to see you. Frank laughed. Is that my fault too? I didn't ask her to come. She insisted on disrupting my life. As for MF Group, Auntie, maybe my good-natured demeanor over the years made you forget that our families were in an arranged marriage, not underdog admiration. My family treats business like business. Whoever's more capable takes the lead. Using this to accuse me is downright funny. Frank's words angered Susan so much, she hung up the phone. Later, Frank asked Melody and learned that the MF Group situation was something she and Vivian worked on together. Melody thought Frank might be going soft on the Millers and explained, "It's just business. We'd already planned to move way back. Purely because you and Jenny were still married. Now that you're divorced, there's no need to hold back." Frank looked at Melody. "No need to explain, I'm not involved in any of that." The next news about Henry was on social media trends. He was hospitalized, unrecognizable from the torment. Frank learned that after being tricked by Jenny back then, Henry ended up in debt and became a twisted rich lady's lover. Frank figured people have to pay for their actions. Their endings were well-deserved. 3 years later in spring, Frank sent an invitation to Jack, inviting him to his wedding. As spring bloomed, Frank walked through the bright days of the season with his beloved.